Hi everyone, I am Sheefra Blume, and I'm really so grateful and happy to be here. So I will introduce myself, and I want to let you guys know that it's really a pleasure to be here. I was supposed to be here 2 weeks ago and I got really sick, and so please thank you for your patience and grace with me as I am still not fully recovered. You can probably hear it in my voice, but I was really looking forward to being here with you guys, and we have a lot to cover and to go over, so forgive me if there's a little bit of coughing still. I'll do my best to project my voice, and thank you for your patience and for your refuah shlema and your good wishes. So I am Sheefra Blume. It's really lovely to be here with you. I am a certified clinical herbalist, herbal medicine practitioner, as well as a coach specializing in narrative trauma release. And what this really is working through the stuff that isn't serving us so that we really can step into our best versions of ourselves. And I, as both an herbalist and a coach specializing with narrative and with trauma, really do take this holistic approach of looking at the physical as well as the emotional. And so today I was reviewing and going through my notes for this session, and I chose the topic, and again, thank you for your patience with me as I work through my voice fully recovering and just speaking a little slower than usual. But as I was going through my notes, I looked at my topic, and the topic I had chosen was confidence as it relates to generational healing from a Jewish perspective or a Kabbalistic perspective. And so I was laughing a little bit at myself, like, wow, Sheefra, you chose such a big topic. Why did you choose this gigantic topic? And then as I was reviewing it a little, I thought, well, this is because this is exactly what I love to talk about, and this is what I've been doing in my work for some odd 10 years, or more really. And so this is what we'll talk about. We'll go over, we have 30 minutes together, and we'll go over confidence. Why did I choose confidence? I chose confidence because I really do help people to just step into their full self, right? So confidence is going to help us with whatever the underlying issue. If we can step forward with confidence, if we need clarity, if we need decision making, whatever it is we're working through, the more confidence we can bring to the table. It's tied to our self-worth. It's tied to how we are in our relationships, and it really affects all of our lives. So this is the umbrella, is this idea of confidence, but how we will approach it is how I approach it in my work, is looking at how, confidence in my own life, and therefore how I'm addressing so many different aspects of my life, is tied to my own choices, and also to my family and to my lineage, really. And so this idea of generational healing and generational inheritance, and I want to talk about this a little bit from a Jewish perspective as well, particularly because I feel like right now, in particular, there's so much going on in the world that I certainly feel, and the way that we are responding to any of life's scenarios day to day, and especially when big world things are happening, are influenced by our ancestral stories and those narratives of our history, collectively and personally. And so we'll talk about that a little, and then I do want to give a framework from a Jewish perspective from Kabbalah of healing, because this is the foundation of all of my work. And because I feel so blessed and grateful that in our tradition, we have been gifted truly a map for healing. And it is, as far as I've been able to tell in the decade that I've been studying this, it is as robust as, traditional Chinese medicine, TCM, or Ayurveda, traditional Indian medicine. It's just that we don't always talk about it this way in our tradition, but it's there. So I want to go into it a little. I encourage you to get a notebook and a pen, because usually when I do these talks, it's quite possible that you'll want to take some notes and that you could have some really cool insights, even as we're doing this little talk, and we've got about 20 minutes here together now. And so I encourage you to just grab a pen and so where to begin? Thank you for your patience with me as my voice is still recovering. So where I would like to begin is, you can think about whatever challenge life is presenting you with right now. And, usually you could think about this on a smaller level and a wider scale level. And if you're like most people, there's the day-to-day things that we're growing through. And there's the bigger global things that are more cathartic and existential that we're also facing and dealing with. So I encourage you, just as I'm talking, to really focus on one thing. And let's take this wider perspective, and this really is a Jewish Kabbalistic perspective, that, each challenge that life presents us with, we're gonna, in this exercise, take the opportunity to see it as a life presenting us with an opportunity to actually to grow, but specifically to embody more of our soul and of the attributes that make up our soul, embodying more of who we really are, right? And so what we get to do from this Kabbalistic perspective is we get to look at whatever, challenge or goal, or whether it's a, quote unquote good or bad thing. It's an obstacle, it's a challenge that is our next growth, it's our next piece of growth. And so we get to look at it and say, okay, which part of myself is being asked to expand in order to go through this current obstacle and make it to the other side and make it to the next thing, right? And so this map that we've been given, if you're familiar, are the Sfirot we have in the Jewish tradition. And a lot of us are familiar of this, like with the Omer. We count the Sfirot with the Omer. But you could actually take these and apply them to whatever you're going through right now to gain really, really deep insight into your current situation. So that's one thing I want to mention. And then there's a way to unwind. We often will read about these things, in a little book or something, and it seems very simplistic. But actually, these attributes of ourselves are incredibly deep. And so on the physical level, these different attributes also correspond to physical parts of our body, right? And so this is where the physical healing and the spiritual healing coming together. So when I was, younger, and when I was in herbalism school, simultaneously studying a lot of Rambam, and being so fascinated at how these Jewish spiritual teachings and these medical teachings and how the body works and how the energetics work all blend together. So what's really interesting is you can look at whatever's going on in your life and then start to drop in more into a felt sense of the body, whether you're looking at actual physical symptoms or whether you're taking more of a somatic approach and thinking, when I really feel the feelings around the situation, where do I feel it in my body? Okay, and then you can look at the chart, at this map that we've been given of the different sfirot, and based on that, you can say, okay, I'm going to start here. And the truth is, whichever of them you decide to study more in relation to your circumstance, you're going to gain insight and grow. But the way I just described is a way to do it with a little bit more specificity and accuracy. Okay, so putting that aside for a moment, we're going to talk about how a situation comes into our life in the first place. So whatever it is that you're growing through, and we can use the idea of confidence in a certain area of our life. We can also look at this pathway of the four worlds, and looking at the four worlds from a very practical, applicable perspective, like a map, we can see how energy comes in. And so in Kabbalah, we get to learn about how the entire universe is coming into form. And what's really interesting is how the entire universe comes into form is mirroring how we incarnate as human beings. And it's also mirroring how situations come into form in our life and how we manifest and create as little mirror images of Creator, right? How we create anything in our life as well. If we have a project or an idea or something that we're growing through or something that we want to create, it's also going to go through these 4 stages. And so because this is a short little video, I'm going to simplify this so much. But I really would actually love to hear how this lands for you. The 4 stages, in a very practical sense, are going to basically translate to belief, thought, speech/emotion, and then action, right? And so if we want to overcome something or create something here in the world of action, we can go up and down that ladder. So if we're here in the world of action, then we want to address things in the realm of our emotions and our speech. But in order to do that, we have to address it at the level of our thoughts. And in order to do that, we have to address it at the level of our beliefs, right? And so whether we're healing and going up the ladder, which is, action to emotion and speech to thoughts to beliefs, or whether we're bringing something in, bringing a new way of approaching situations in our life, bringing something new into our life, and we're going down the ladder, belief, thought, speech, emotion, and action, either way, this is the path. And so if you want to actually draw this out like a map for our growth and for our healing, you can map out the 4 stages, which are the 4 worlds, right? And then within that, you can map out the 10 sefirot. And through this, you can literally address where you are specifically in your growth and start to expand and start to heal. And so I want to explain more specifically the modality through which I do this with people, because I think even in listening, it'll you can start to walk through it actually yourself. But before I go into that part, I do want to just address the generational piece. This piece can be really insightful for a lot of people because, it's so easy to feel so much weight on our shoulders sometimes. And a lot of what we're growing through, it's our own. It's based on our own choices and our own actions, and we get to take responsibility. And simultaneously, there is a lot that we get to process that could even be from generations prior. And this is really important to remember, and there's a way to actually track this too, whether something that you're growing through is starting with your own self, or very likely starting with perhaps your parents or grandparents, or perhaps even much further. And what can be beautiful about this is to realize that, sometimes it's not always your own. And so a situation or something you're healing through could have its roots in a few generations back. And so then there's ways that you also get to heal that, and knowing where a pattern started, knowing where it began, is incredibly helpful so that you're not trying to just take everything as if it started with you, because very likely it didn't. And also part of why I'm saying this is because the method and the steps that I'm going to kind of briefly go through with you right now can apply and can work whether something is a personal story of yours, excuse me, whether it's a personal story of yours, something that happened in your life, something that you're working on, a pattern that, has been with you, or whether it's, something that you think probably started with one of your parents or grandparents. But it can also work with memories. It can also work with dreams. It can also work with collective stories that don't have to be things that you personally experience, but that we take it on. And without going too deep, I have here on my shelf, I have my books in front of me, which is nice because they get to inspire me while I'm speaking to you. But one book I have is Sharha Gugulim. It's an English translation that I have here on my shelf, and it's definitely not a beginner book by any means, but it's the idea of the cycles and reincarnations that a soul goes through. And in this, which I'm not going to go so deep into it right now, but we learn how different things can be rooted in at different levels, and how cycles and tendencies and patterns can repeat themselves, both through lineage and through even, cycles of reincarnation, right? So I'm just bringing this all in to basically say that while in the Jewish tradition we're given a map that makes healing actually quite simple, at the same time, where things are really coming from can actually be complicated. And this is actually a good thing, because what it means is that you don't always have to know when a pattern began. But what you do know is that there's a way to break through it. And there's ways to, to break through whatever obstacle is currently presenting itself, and, step into, in this case, we're talking about confidence. But just really what that means is just to step into a fuller, more embodied version of yourself. And that's the game. That's this path that we're on, is just continuing to develop and embody more and more of who we really are and who we really came here to be. So when I mapped out the 4 stages, from belief to thought to speech and emotion is that same one in the third, and then action. When I mapped that out, it's really important, that third stage, okay, to notice, because the third stage, which is that world of formation, it's where that's this bridge where, belief, which is very intangible, thought, which is still pretty intangible, go from, being up in our heads and up in this space up here to actually having results in the physical world and in our actions. The bridge is our emotion, how we feel, and what we're able to articulate, what we're actually able to say. And so this is where everything I just introduced actually comes into very tangibly. And you can ask yourself, how well can you articulate exactly the desire, exactly the thing you want? And how well can you identify where the obstacle started, right? So it's 2 things. So we have just a few minutes left, so we'll play together a little now, since I gave a full introduction. So why don't you go ahead and think about a goal that you have right now? Okay, something that feels a little intimidating, or, there's a little bit of a lack of confidence on some level. And you can always come back, and hopefully this will be posted so that you can think about it and take a little more time with it later. But let's just say that you're able to, are you able to write it down, first of all? And here's something that's so simple, but people often overlook, is to write it down as a full sentence. I want to, or I'm going to, whatever the goal is, and then a period at the end. And extra points, bonus points, if you can put a date in there, like in the next 2 weeks, or by Wednesday, or whatever it is for you. Okay. And then if you think about what comes up for you when you think about doing that, and since you're doing it as part of the exercise, most likely there's some kind of limitation or fear or block or something that sort of gets in the way. So then I want you to just think about, or rather don't think, but feel into where you feel that in your body. And you can just, take a moment and notice where you feel that in your body. Okay? And you could write that down as well, and you can write down the sensation, and you can write as many details as you can about that sensation. Okay? Right now, we're in that bridge between the thoughts and the reality. So we have these thoughts about what we want, and we have this reality that it's not really forming it. So there's 2 ways we can go. You can craft a powerful statement, a powerful affirmation to really reinforce, and I think we have time to do that. The other thing that takes longer, that's more, work to be done, like in session, for example, where you can go deeper, is where you identify that feeling in your body. And it's not necessarily rational in your head. It's not necessarily where you think it might have originated. But we feel into when that feeling first was experienced in our life. And what's really interesting is that it's not always what we thought. And sometimes it's something generational that doesn't really seem to make sense. But trust yourself here, because these things work in complicated ways and not always logically. Okay? So trust yourself in that. And that would be something to really unwind and go deeper with. But for fun, in these last couple of minutes that we have together here, I want you to take your statement, I will, I want to, first of all, notice the language that you wrote it with. For example, if you wrote, I think I want to, or I might, right? And you're noticing like the softer language, then you can shift that into I will. And if I will feels a little too scary, you can change it to I can, or I could, right? And so you want to see what lands best for you. And then you put in your goal. So let's go with I can. I can, and you put in your goal, and you put in your date for when. And if can is still a little bit too scary, you can say I could. Okay, so I can achieve my goal by April. And now we're going to say because. And so when we say because, I want you to think of a time, I want you to think of your goal, and I want you to think of who you're showing up as when you're really embodying that goal. Like, I'm a confident version of myself when I'm embodying that goal. I'm fully in my confidence. And then I want you to think of a time in the past when you were in your confidence, even if it was just for a moment. Think about how that confidence feels in your body. Maybe it just feels like an open heart. And maybe you haven't ever felt confident before, but you felt that open heart sensation before. And I want you to think of a time when you felt the sensation of what it feels like when you embody this goal. And you're going to take that example and you'll say, because, and then you'll write in the example, in the past, in this past example, I did it. Okay, and be as specific as you can. And when you have that full sentence together, and you can re-listen to this again and really do it thoughtfully, you're going to speak that out loud. You're going to breathe. You're going to speak it out loud slowly and take deep breaths in between each pause and feel it start to settle in your body and in your being. And this is the simplest little exercise I wanted to give you to show that bridge from the world of thoughts and beliefs, all the way down to having it actually change in your actions. So I know I really covered quite a lot. And hopefully it kind of all, oops, dropped my phone there. Hopefully it kind of all is coming together in the end to make some sense for you here, just to give some practical examples, but to also just give a perspective on a really holistic approach to healing that is from a Jewish background and from a Jewish tradition, and really just how powerful that can be. So I hope you guys really enjoyed this. Thank you so much, and we will see you next time.